We like to get cozy, with a good book and really kind of dig into it.
Yeah.
What makes it tick. And today,
Absolutely.
we are unwrapping How My Neighbor Stole Christmas by Meghan Quinn.
Fun.
This book has been getting a lot of buzz online,
Yeah.
especially on TikTok. To help us kind of unpack this Christmas-themed romance novel, we have an expert on all things books and tropes.
I'm so excited to be here. It seems like it's really captured those readers that love a good holiday cheer with a little spicy twist.
Yeah, and you know what? We're going to be using a few sources to guide our deep dive, primarily an episode of the Clutch My Pearls podcast.
Okay.
Have you heard that one?
I have.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this podcast is known for their hilarious and often insightful takes on romance novels.
Mm-hmm.
And then also we'll be pulling in some TikTok and Goodreads reviews to get a sense of what readers are saying.
Love it.
So what is it about this book, How My Neighbor Stole Christmas, that has everyone talking?
Well, the premise itself is a classic setup, right? Enemies to lovers.
Okay.
We have Cole, our grumpy hero, who despises Christmas due to a past tragedy. So Storee, his childhood nemesis, who bursts back into town just radiating Christmas spirit.
Oh.
And wouldn't you know it, they're forced to work together in the Kringletown Christmas competition.
Kringletown.
Like,
Even the name of the town is playing in all those Christmas tropes.
Oh.
I can already see the twinkling lights and smell the hot cocoa.
Yes.
It's like Clutch My Pearls podcast host said, it practically screams Hallmark movie, right?
Exactly. The name Kringletown itself is almost a parody of those idyllic Christmas towns we see so often in these movies and books. And it really sets the stage for a story that's lighthearted and whimsical and just steeped in holiday tradition.
Yeah.
And I think by leaning into these well-established tropes, Quinn creates this sense of familiarity and comfort for the reader, especially for those who just adore Christmas-themed romances.
Yeah, it's like she's giving readers exactly what they want.
Yes.
But then adding her own unique flair. And one of those unique elements is the competition itself. It's not just like your typical bake-off or decorating contest.
Right.
We're talking like eggnog cocktail face-offs,
Yes.
recycled movie scene recreations,
Yeah.
and even a reindeer barn rendezvous that, let's just say, gets a little steamy.
The Clutch My Pearls podcast definitely had a lot of fun with that reindeer barn scene.
Oh, I bet.
And, those unusual challenges aren't just there for the laughs. They actually serve a purpose in the story.
Okay.
They force Cole and Storee to work together to get out of their comfort zones and ultimately to confront their feelings for each other.
It's like those Christmas lights that get all tangled up.
Yes.
You have to work through the knots to create something beautiful.
I love that.
But amidst all this festive chaos and witty banter, this book also explores some deeper themes, right? Like Cole's journey to kind of heal from his past trauma and rediscover the joy of Christmas.
Absolutely. It's not all just reindeer games and candy canes. This story delves into those complexities of grief, forgiveness, and the power of love to heal old wounds.
Yeah.
And that's what makes this book more than just a lighthearted romp. It's a story about finding hope and happiness, even in the face of adversity.
And speaking of hope and happiness, before we get too deep into the plot, let me take a quick moment to remind our wonderful listeners to subscribe to the Book Nook podcast and leave us a review if you're enjoying our deep dive. We love hearing from fellow bookworms, and your support helps more people discover our cozy corner of the podcasting world.
We really appreciate it.
Now back to How My Neighbor Stole Christmas. One of the things that intrigued me about this book is the unique narrative style.
Okay.
Cole actually interacts with the rhyming narrator, kind of like the Grinch talking to the audience in the classic movie.
That's such a clever technique. It adds a layer of self-awareness and humor to the story, allowing Quinn to kind of play with those tropes while still embracing them wholeheartedly. It's like she's winking at the reader, acknowledging the familiar elements while still creating something fresh and engaging. And that narrative choice really speaks to the overall tone of the book, right? It's lighthearted and playful and self-aware, poking fun at the conventions of the romance genre, but still delivering a heartwarming and satisfying love story.
So it's like a rom-com,
Yes.
but in book form.
Exactly.
Complete with all the witty banter and over-the-top scenarios that we love.
Precisely. And speaking of those over-the-top scenarios, the Clutch My Pearls podcast really gave us a play-by-play of those outrageous Kringletown Christmas competition challenges.
I love it.
They break down each one, from the eggnog cocktail face-off where Storee wins with her Aunt Cindy's secret recipe, to the recycled movie scene challenge where Cole and Storee have to recreate a famous Christmas movie scene using only items found at a thrift store.
I love that they recreated a scene from The Grinch And even threw in some suggestive hip thrusts
Oh, yes.
to appeal to the thrift store owner's well-known fondness for a certain male dance troupe.
The thunder from down under. It seems that even in a wholesome Christmas town, a little bit of cheeky humor finds its way in.
It's those little details that make the story so much fun.
Yes.
It's not just about the romance. It's about the quirky characters, the hilarious situations, and the overall sense of Christmas spirit that just permeates the entire town.
It's that escapism that draws readers to books like this, especially during the holiday season. We want to get lost in a world where everything is merry and bright, even if it's a little over the top.
But of course, no romance would be complete without some conflict.
Right.
And in How My Neighbor Stole Christmas, that conflict comes in the form of sabotage during the light display challenge.
Yeah.
Storee, convinced that Cole is cheating because of those hip thrusts, decides to take matters into her own hands and rips down some of his lights.
That's such a classic move in the enemies to lovers trope. They're so focused on one-upping each other that they resort to some questionable tactics, but it's also a sign that their feelings are starting to shift.
Because who sabotages someone they don't care about?
Exactly. And of course, Cole figures out that it was Storee, which leads to some hilarious back and forth, and ultimately to a deeper understanding of each other's motivations.
Then there's Cupid Night, which is like a big Christmas-themed couples party. Cole basically forces Storee to go on a date with him as part of their fake romance strategy for the competition.
And this is where their feelings really start to develop. It's all very Hallmark, with mistletoe and stolen glances, and the entire town gossiping about whether these two will finally get together.
It sounds like the perfect blend of small-town charm and romantic tension.
Yes.
And speaking of tension, we can't forget about that steamy candy cane encounter in the reindeer barn.
Yes. The scene that launched 1,000 memes, the Clutch My Pearls podcast, had a field day with that one, and for good reason.
I can imagine.
It's a scene that perfectly encapsulates the book's blend of humor, heat, and heart.
It's ridiculous and hot and sweet all at the same time.
Yeah.
Which I think sums up the book perfectly. But it's not just about the physical attraction. There's also an emotional vulnerability that underlies their connection. They're starting to open up to each other to share their fears and insecurities.
And that vulnerability is what ultimately allows their relationship to blossom. It's no longer just about winning a competition. It's about truly seeing and understanding each other.
The road trip for the candy cane making competition is a great example of that. They're forced to spend time together outside of the competitive environment of Kringletown, and that's when Cole's past trauma resurfaces.
It's a reminder that even amidst the festive cheer, he's still grappling with the loss of his parents. But this time, Storee is there to support him. She listens to him, helps him face his fears, and shows him that he's not alone.
It's like those tangled Christmas lights again.
Oh, I like that.
They're helping each other untangle the knots of their pasts.
Yeah.
So they can shine brighter together.
That's a beautiful way to put it. But of course, no romance is without its obstacles. And Cole and Storee face their fair share of miscommunications and misunderstandings along the way.
Like Storee's sister, who's convinced that Cole is just using her for the competition.
Classic jealous sibling trope.
Right.
It's a bit frustrating, but it also adds another layer of drama to the story. And ultimately, it forces Cole and Storee to confront their true feelings for each other.
But before we get to the grand finale, let me remind our amazing listeners to subscribe to the Book Nook podcast for more delightful deep dives into the books everyone's talking about. And if you're enjoying our show, we'd love for you to leave a review and spread the bookish love.
Your support means the world to us. Now let's get back to Kringletown and find out how it all ends for Cole and Storee. You know, it's interesting that you bring up Storee's sister, because that conflict really highlights one of the key themes of the book, which is the importance of communication.
Right.
Throughout the story, both Cole and Storee struggle to kind of express their true feelings, which leads to misunderstandings and hurt feelings.
Yeah.
And it's only when they finally start being honest with themselves and with each other that they can truly move forward.
It's so true. So many romantic conflicts could be avoided if people just talk to each other.
Yeah.
Openly and honestly.
For sure.
But I guess that wouldn't make for a very exciting story, would it?
Perhaps not. But it's a valuable lesson nonetheless.
Right.
Speaking of lessons, we can't forget about some of the criticism that the book has received.
Yeah.
For its slow burn romance and over-the-top Christmas elements.
Right. Some of the Goodreads reviewers that we looked at found it a bit too saccharine.
Yeah.
Even going so far as to call it Christmas throw-up.
Wow.
Do you think those criticisms are valid?
You know, I think it really depends on the reader's individual preferences.
Okay.
Some people just adore that over-the-top Christmas cheer,
Right.
while others find it a little overwhelming.
Yeah.
And as for the slow burn romance, I think it actually serves a purpose in the story. By taking their time to develop the relationship, Quinn allows for a more nuanced exploration of Colin's story's emotional journeys.
That makes sense. It's like savoring a delicious Christmas cookie.
Yes.
Instead of just gobbling it down in one bite.
Exactly. And in the end, I think